feel proud that I'm different. When I was around 11, I started taking drugs. When I was 13, I was a heroin addict and I left school. I started to have major organ failure. I was 22 stone and I couldn't walk. And at that point, the critical moment was really to decide, do I want to live or do I want to die? That was the bottom, and then I started to come back up after that. Innovation and entrepreneurship was an amazing thing, and it could make the world a better place. I went from not walking to running marathons, and I went from sort of semi-literate to graduating at Oxford a couple of months ago. In leadership generally, that feeling of being different and slightly awkward is something that is a common thread, but embracing it can be incredibly powerful. I think as leaders it's our duty to try and make people's lives better, and if anyone in our organisation asks me what's the purpose of what's our goal, there's two goals.
Tobyn.
Hi.
Hello and welcome to our podcast. Tell us, what is your business about?
So I work in the automotive sector. We have a business called the Figaro Shop, which restores and exports custom Nissan Figaro cars. So what that means is if you come to us and say, can you make a car that matches my handbag, then we'll do that and ship it to you wherever you are in the world. We also have a group of service and repair shops for cars that offer MOTs and servicing and things like that. And so our businesses are based around the south of England.
Wonderful. So tell me about your first business. How did you come up with that?
So if I tell you about my background and why I got into entrepreneurship, that will probably be an easier way to explain it. So when I was around 11, I started taking drugs. When I was 13, I was a heroin addict and I left school. And by the time I was 14, I worked as a drug mule across Europe, and I spent a number of years living on the streets and living in cars and things like that. And the challenges over that time were not being able to abstain, injecting heroin, getting arrested, and eventually I started to have major organ failure. And over the years, my health got a lot worse. I had vascular disease as well. And then in 2017, after nearly 10 years of surgery, I was due to have my legs amputated. And I met a surgeon in Oxford, and a wonderful man called Henk, and he said that he would try and make me a set of legs out of my back. And so he cut my lats off and took out some gracilis muscles and made a set of legs. And I left hospital at the end of 2017, and I think I was 22 stone and I couldn't walk, just with a frame. And at that point, the critical moment was really to decide, do I want to live or do I want to die? And if I was going to live, what type of contribution was I going to make to the world? And when you've only lived on the street and you don't have a CV, entrepreneurship is an option that's open to you. And so I bought a Nissan Figaro, earned enough to buy it through selling things on eBay and earning £1 or so from each one, and restored this car. The client was overwhelmed, and I realized that innovation and entrepreneurship was an amazing thing, and it could make the world a better place, and that the most important thing was that I wanted to be the best entrepreneur that I could be, and that meant that I needed to be healthy and I needed some type of education. And so as a consequence of my experiences, I went from not walking to running marathons, and I went from sort of semi-literate to graduating at Oxford a couple of months ago. And I think that core want to use innovation and entrepreneurship to create a change and believing that entrepreneurship is the most pure form of innovation is the thing that drives me. And so that's how I got into business in the first place.
Wow, this is so inspiring. This is so excellent.
Thanks.
What is actually very interesting for me is that you, of course, you had an option, you had a choice at some point to make, and then you decided that you want to actually move forward and you want to make a difference.
Yeah.
What was that thing at that moment? Do you remember what was it? Because you had to choose. You could choose, of course, and you said that you chose. What was it there that?
Yeah, I think in life we always have choices, but often we don't realise that we have choices. And I think for me, it was there was a specific time. I'd been in a consulting room at the time. I'd probably had 16 or 17 surgeries, and I was going to see this consultant about having my legs amputated, and I assumed it was just going to be my left leg and it was going to be down near the ankle, and I'd sort of mentally prepared myself for that. And when I saw him, he said, "Oh no, it's both legs and it's above the knee, and we probably won't be able to fit you with prosthetics." And I went outside and sat on the bench, and at the time I couldn't wear shoes because my legs were really swelled up, and I looked down at my left foot and my toes, I could still just about wiggle it. And at that point I can't remember whether I said it out loud or not, but my thought was, you're not having them, you're not taking them. And I think that was the bottom, and then I started to come back up after that. But I only realised that on reflection. But that point was when I decided I decide. So, but I think that we all have choices every day, and often we don't realise we have those choices. Yeah.
This is brilliant. This is so brilliant. I want to go back a little bit. So you said you were 13 when everything started. Do you remember why?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's a core part of why a lot of people become entrepreneurs. It's a similarity that I find in other entrepreneurs, and I would just say it was that I felt very different. I felt that I just wanted to be the same as other people, and I wasn't. I was different, and I wasn't comfortable with that at all, and it made me feel very uncomfortable. And at the time I didn't realise, but on reflection, that was why I took drugs, because it took away that feeling of being different. I think often entrepreneurship and in leadership generally, that feeling of being different and slightly awkward is something that is a common thread, but embracing it can be incredibly powerful. And so now I would say it's something that I feel proud that I'm different.
Yes, you should be, definitely. And it's a very sensitive age, isn't it? That age, because you want to belong somewhere. You're trying to find out who you are and all that. And it's so fascinating that you went through this route, but then you always had it in the back of your head that you want to do something different, you want to do something more. And then came a point, and you started, basically that was your turning point, wasn't it? That you were like, okay, enough is enough. Now I want to do something different, and it's my time. So tell me about your other businesses. So you said that.
So we're in the service repair sector. So it's an area of automotive called fast fit. So that means that cars come in and they're fitted fast, and then they leave again. And so it offers all types of service and repair and tyres and things like that for cars. And typically those businesses run from small depots. So you might have 7-10 people in a depot, and a depot will serve a local area.
Why did you choose cars as a business? Do you have a passion towards them? Is there something about them? What is it?
I don't think I had a particular interest in cars. At the beginning, it was something that I could teach myself how to do. And it wasn't until more recently that I took on more formal training. I've always said to the people in my organisation that we're not a car company, we're a people company. And as I said previously, innovation is this pure thing, and entrepreneurship is so pure as a form of changing the world, because it's unadulterated. And the way I'd put it is that if you think of, like, if you could have this magic wand and you could touch people and you could improve their lives, well, that's entrepreneurship. And so I don't think it's anything to do with products, really, although somebody may have an interest in a product. It's really about the impact that you can make on the people inside the organisation and on the people that interact with the organisation.
Changing people's lives. Do you think you have done that?
I think we spend more of our lives working than we do anything else. Most of the people that I work with probably spend more time with me than they do with their families. And so I think as leaders, it's our duty to try and make people's lives better. And if anyone in our organisation asks me what's the purpose of what's our goal, there's two goals: to make the people in the organisation feel loved and cared for, and economic prosperity, and everything else falls out the back of that. And so I would like to think that I'd made some improvement on people's lives.
How do you do that?
I think there's a number of approaches. I like the metaphor of offering people mastery, autonomy and purpose. I can't remember exactly who wrote that, but I like it. And I think if you give that to somebody, you're not just managing them, you're leading them, and you're letting them go off by themselves and become great at the thing that they're interested in doing. So I think there's that side of things, almost like the operational side of things. And then the other side of things, which is, to make people loved and cared for, the sort of almost invisible stuff in a way, is to, that's what happens in teams, whether it's a team of, a sports team or a team, you feel that. I think in Buddhism, maybe they talk about different types of love, and, you've got romantic love as a team, intellectual love, and then love as touch, and intellectual love and love as a team. You can build those in an organisation so that you can make people feel loved and cared for.
True. Oh, that's so true. I'm going to go back in time.
Yeah.
What were you like as a child? Do you remember?
I think I probably came across very confident. But inside I was really anxious and awkward. I liked sport. People would have described me as happy and successful. I was comfortable with sports and comfortable at school and things like that.
Did you know that when you were a child, did you know that one day you wanted to kind of like be an entrepreneur, or make something for yourself, or did you have these dreams, or
no,
was it?
Not at all. I mean, I think my background, my parents were probably quite socialist, and I lived in a church, and we didn't learn about economics and finance and things like that. It wasn't something that they prioritized, and so I definitely didn't think I would go into business. However, I've kept one thing from my childhood that is under a cupboard, but should be stuck on the wall actually. That's a statement that I wrote when I was about 9, and it said something like, it was a class thing, and it said something like, "What do you want to do when you're older?" And in mine, I think it said, "I want to work for Greenpeace and I want to change the world," and that was about it. So that's about as close as it gets.
That's very interesting, because even then you knew that you wanted to make a difference. You wanted to change the world. So in a way, would you say that you are stepping towards that now?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's. I think that the way that I look at it in terms of changing the world is that you've got there's different ways you can do it. You've got the depth. If you think of it like a T section, you've got the depth of how much you impact one individual's life, and then you've got the breadth of how many people you impact. And I think as an entrepreneur is on their journey to decide on their approach, that's a good way to weigh up how you're going to change the world. Am I going to change lots of people's lives just a little bit? Or going to change a small number of people's lives in a by an order of magnitude?
When you were because you mentioned earlier that at some point you were at your lowest point, and then that was a time that you started kind of like building up. When you were at that point, what was your dream at that moment in time?
So I think with a dream, it's something that one has to feed every day with everything you do. Like I said, I felt that I wanted to be as healthy as I possibly could be, and I wanted to be educated at the best university in the world, and that was important to me because I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to feed this person inside me that wanted to change the world. And partway through my academic journey, I started to look at what was it I was trying to achieve, and how did I achieve these things? How did I go from walking to marathon running, from pretty much illiterate, I didn't know how to spell university, to an Oxford graduate? How did I achieve these things? And the theory I came up with was that a transformation starts at the end. So it starts with seeing the very end. So can I smell it? Can I feel it? Am I already living in the space? So I try and live in the space that I've already changed the world, and all I'm doing is enjoying this amazing journey that I'm on every day. And to get there, I think you need three things, and an amazing coach taught me this many years ago. Was you need witness experience, so you need to look at other people that have walked the path that you want to walk. You need direct experience, so as you make a step forward every single day, think about it, write it down, look at that step. And then you need learning experience. You need some kind of education from books or from events and things like that. And then those three things are supercharged exponentially by the routine, by the amount of times you do them and the discipline that follows them. And so I live by a militant routine where I write about how I think I performed during the day, at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day. I spend a lot of time on health and well-being so that my decisions are the best decisions I can make. And I believe that it's those things, those three: witness experience, direct experience, learning experience, and the power of routine that create transformations. And I think that goes for an individual, for a business, for an industry. And so that's the framework that I use to constantly feed the goals.
Tell me about your MBA. You've done an MBA, is that correct?
Yeah,
So
just finished.
That.
Yeah. So I think it's really. So I think I'll preface it by saying that I think there is value in both sides. I think often I meet people that in business that don't go the university route, that are entrepreneurs and are proponents of that, and then I meet a lot of people that would only go an academic route. I think the value in learning by doing is huge. It gives you the motivation and the satisfaction. And when I talked about that direct experience, it gives you that. But I think academics gives you a foundation, and it worked especially well for me because it's mid-career and I already had lots of things that I'd learned or picked up to some extent. So it was very relatable. It was very easy for me to take a management framework and then go to work the next morning and try the framework. And that often failed. and I'm sure I made some mistakes, and people thought, you know, my direct reports thought, what is going on? Well, I know they did because they told me, but a lot of those things were really useful. And so I would say that yeah, it was useful. And I guess as we've grown as an organisation and we're cross-county and things like that, and we do a lot of international business, it's a lot more beneficial then. But do you need an MBA to start a business? Absolutely not. So I wouldn't want anyone to watch this and think that was the only route or the way to get started. In fact, that would be a really bad way to get started. You're
right. It's very important to have these skills and also to learn as you do things as well, and then just focusing on the academic side of things is not going to always be helpful, depending of course on the route that you're going to take. But exactly as you're saying, that so it's nice to have that background, and then you complemented it with MBA, didn't you? So
yeah, I think there's definitely a trajectory. You know, when I started, it was, how do I take this widget and sell this widget on eBay and make £1 more by the time I've paid for the shipping, which is very simple, very basic economics. And I think that's important when you're starting, because it gives you the hustle and all of those things that you need for entrepreneurship, which an MBA wouldn't teach you. And then for me personally, I moved into a phase where I started to realise I don't actually have enough skills. We'd grown as an organisation, we had departments and management structures and things like that, and I realised I didn't have the skills, and so I started to read about it and look into it. And it was only, you know, much later on that I realised, okay, now I need some corporate skills to be able to make this work. But you know, if somebody was watching this and thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, then, you know, you just try it. I've heard many people say you can't teach entrepreneurship, and I think that's true. You know, entrepreneurship is about, I see something that's happening and I think I can do it better than that. Well, that's entrepreneurship. I think that's it. And there's a little bit of ego, because you have to think that you can do something better than the way that it's being done, and a little bit of, I want to make things better, I want to change the world, and I think that's entrepreneurship.
Would you say that what you're doing now is your passion? And if it's not, what is your passion, and how are you going to get there?
I think it has to be your passion. I'd say it's analogous to sport. So if you think about marathon running, and it's not nice, it's not enjoyable, it hurts. Every step hurts all the way. Business, and especially entrepreneurship, is analogous to that. It hurts every single day, and you just learn that you love that pain. And so it has to be your purpose, because otherwise you're not going to be able to keep going. So it's my purpose, it's my everything, it's what I live for, I breathe for, and I enjoy all the pain and all the pleasure.
Moving forward, what are your plans for future? Do you think you're going to stick to basically what you have, or are you going to have a bigger thing in your mind?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I found fascinating with academic study was that I realised my lack of knowledge around economics, really. And then as I started to read a little more about that after I finished my studies, you know, I'm fascinated by technology, and especially the proliferation of AI and how that's going to, the economic changes, the macroeconomic changes that's going to make to us as a species. And so I'm looking at that and how it relates to the automotive industry, and I'm fascinated by that. You know, I'm fascinated by how things develop. You know, why, for example, in the UK is the speed of innovation so slow compared to the US. You know, in the UK, since the mid 19th century, if our speed of innovation and efficiency had been the same as the US, we would all be twice as wealthy, so we'd all be in abundance. And I'm fascinated by that, because I think that it's our job as entrepreneurs to improve that economic efficiency.
How do you think we can do that?
Well, I think we can use technology. I think we only really have, 3 outputs: the amount of hours that we work, the amount of equipment and stock and buildings that we have, and then the amount of efficiency. And I think efficiency is the one there's a big win there. And so, particularly in my industry, it's very inefficient, and in lots of areas it's antiquated. And so I'm looking at how technology can improve that. So I'm fascinated with that area.
If you want to give one piece of advice to someone who wants to become an entrepreneur, or somebody who has a dream and they don't know where to start, what would that be?
Starting with the second half of the question, I think the person that has a dream but doesn't know where to start is already 80% of the way there, because they have the dream, and they should use my framework, that belief in the dream. So living in the dream, in the altered state, in the new place, witnessing people that have already been there, making small steps every day, and learning about it, however they learn about it. And then just doing that as a routine every day will get them there. And they're already part of the way there anyway, so they don't need that much help. And then somebody that's thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, I would just say you just do it. There's no qualifier. There's nothing particularly that is required. Just start now.
Going back to you and your experience.
Yeah.
What were your challenges on the way? Because entrepreneurship journey is not a steady line, is it?
No, and I think it's a trajectory. So my answer about starting my answer to your question about somebody that wants to be an entrepreneur and saying just start is because there is this trajectory, and at the start it is just starting. It's walking out of here and going onto the street and trying to sell something to someone. It's whatever the area that you want to get into. But I think you have steps in the growth all the way through, and you have to be reflective enough to be able to see when it's time to grow, because the view of a business when it's emergent and it's just you is a completely, is all hustle basically. There's not really much else than hustle. And then as you progress, you need to understand financial mechanisms and assets and a bit of economics and management and all of those other things. And so I think there's been different challenges over the years, but the biggest challenge is really with yourself, because as I said, it's analogous to running a marathon. It's analogous to sport. It just hurts. And it's always going to hurt, and the pain is only ever going to get bigger. It doesn't go away. It's not going to be next week things are going to be better. They're always going to be like that, and you just have to learn to love it. And so yes, there's the classic challenges around money, people, being sued, all of the things that you would find if you looked it up on Google. But really, I think it's the mastery of yourself that is the challenge. And if you master that, which is an ongoing for everybody, but the more you master that, the better you can become, because otherwise you'll burn out.
When you get to the point that the pain is really high, before you get to the pleasure bit or getting used to that, what motivates you at that point?
I think some of it for me is about reflection. So it's making sure that I take time for wellness and to walk in the park and meditate and do yoga and things like that, so that I can reflect and not get too intensely obsessed with problems. Continuous learning. But I think that you can learn as much from the failures as you can from the successes, and you just have to keep reminding yourself of that, because otherwise, like I say, you'd burn out. And I think that's probably the same with anything in life that's hard. It's more about, in the end, about managing yourself, because as human beings, our bodies, our minds can do incredible things.
Yeah.
And we just have to manage ourselves to do it. We have to treat ourselves kindly and feed ourselves well and love ourselves and surround ourselves with other people that love us. And if we put ourselves in those environments, then as humans we can do the most incredible things, and that's amazing to experience. And so, yeah, the joy is in the pain and the pleasure all wrapped up together.
Tobyn, it was an absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.